Okay, voila! Uh, Welcome back to the second part of our introductory lecture. So now that we have covered the how and what of this course, let us focus on the why and the definition. What exactly do we mean when we say strategy? So the term strategy has become one of the most overused and misunderstood words in the business lexicon. So people use it to describe everything from a simple marketing plan to massive corporate overhaul. However, so to be effective managers, we must have a precise academic and practical definition of what we are talking about. So the origin of strategies are not found in business, but in warfare. So the word comes from the Greek strategos, so which combines stratos, meaning army, and again, aging is a meaning to lead. So for thousands of years, strategy was the art of the general. So it was about the large-scale planning and directing of military operations to achieve a position of advantage over an enemy. Um, think of Sun Tzu, 손무. We call the 손무 in Korea. The Art of War or Clausewitz on War. These ancient and classical texts will still influence modern business strategies because the core logic remains the same. How do you use limited resources to achieve a specific goal in a competitive advantages itself? So this one sentence is quite classic and basic to understand why we needed to study for the strategy. Um, in the 1960s and 70s, this military logic began to be formalized into business theory. So all these scholars like Alfred Chandler and Andrews defined strategy as the determination of the basic long-term goals and objectives of an enterprise and the adoption of courses of action and the allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. But as the business world grew more complex, we realized that strategy is not just a plan. I'm gonna write it, not just a plan. So this brings us to the work of Mike Porter, so whom we will reference many times this semester. So you guys must remember his name. The Porter argues that strategy is about competitive advantage itself. So I'm gonna write this word, competitive advantage. So if a firm has a strategy but no competitive advantage, it is simply trading water. So Porter makes a very famous distinction between operational effectiveness and strategy. So operational effectiveness means performing similar activities better than rivals. This includes things like total quality management, TQM, or Six Sigma. So while these are important, they are not strategic. Why? Because if everyone is doing the same thing better, the advantage disappears as soon as your competitors copy your efficiency. So strategy, on the other hand, is about strategic positioning. So which means that performing different activities from rivals or performing similar activities in different ways, it is about being unique. So to understand this more deeply, let's look at the three core elements of a good strategy as defined by Richard Luma. Okay, so this is the core element of a good strategy by Richard Lumet. The first, there is the diagnosis. So this is an explanation of the nature of the challenge. A good diagnosis simplifies the often overwhelming complexity of reality by identifying certain aspects of the situation as critical. So, for example, when Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, so his analysis was that the company was failing because it was trying to do too many things and had lost its focus. Okay, this is the first element by Jobs. Second, there is a guiding policy. This is an overall approach chosen to cope with or overcome the obstacle identified in the diagnosis. In Apple's case, the guiding policy was to simplify the product line and focus on design and user experiences. So I'm gonna write the example of the Apple. What is the guiding policy after the Steve Jobs analysis? Simplify the product line and focus on what? Design and UX, user experience itself. And after the guiding policy, third one, there is a set of coherent actions. So these are steps that are coordinated with one another to work together in accomplishing the guiding policy. The Jobs cut 70% of Apple's product line and invested heavily in the iMac. So this coherence is what makes a strategy powerful. Okay, so you guys understand? I hope understand for it. So another crucial concept we must discuss is the difference between intended, emergent, and realized strategy. A framework developed by Haley Binchberg. He is also important classic academic person. So most textbooks focus on intended strategy. So the rational top-down plan created by management. However, In the real world, things change. A new technology is invented, a global pandemic happens, or a competitor makes a surprise move. You agree that? Mhm. So some parts of your intended strategy becomes unrealized at the same time new ideas bubble up from the bottom of the organization. So these are emergent strategies. The final strategy that actually happens is the realized strategy. So which is a mix of what you planned and how you adopted. As managers, you must be disciplined enough to have a plan, but flexible enough to recognize an emergent opportunity when it appears. Furthermore, as we must distinguish between strategy and tactics. The tactics are the how, the specific actions you take to implement a plan. Strategy is the where and the what. If you are playing a game of chess, the strategy is your overall plan to control the center of the board and trap the king. The tactics are the individual moves you make with your pawns and knights to execute the plan. So I'm gonna write between. So the chess example, this is the king. So what is your strategy on the chess? Yes, of course. So plan to control the center of the board and trap the king. This is strategy. Trap the king. And what is tactics? So you have some crowns, knights, something like that. I'm sorry for my bad drawing. So the tactics are the individual moves you make with your pawns and knights to execute the plan. Like that. So a company with great tactics but a poor strategy will simply become efficiently lost. So they are doing things the right way, but they are doing the wrong thing. So you guys must memorize this sentence. It's the right way, but they are doing the wrong thing. So we also needed to consider the level of structures within a large corporation. At the corporate level, the question is which business should we be in? Diversification. So this involves a decision about diversification, acquisition, and how to allocate capital across different divisions. So for a company like a Samsung, corporate strategists decide whether they should invest more in semiconductor or in life insurance. Okay, so at the business level, the question is how should we compete in this specific market? So this where we talk about cost leadership versus differentiation. So this is the level where the firm interacts directly with its competitor and customers. So at the functional level, the questions is how do the individual departments support the business level strategy? This is where HR, marketing, and R&D come in. A strategy is only as strong as its weakest functional link. Okay. So finally, so let's talk about the ultimate goal, sustainable competitive advantage. So in a perfectly competitive market, economic theory tells us that profits should drop to zero over time as competitors enter the market. So strategy is the art of preventing that from happening. We seek to build moats around our business. So barriers that make it difficult for others to copy what we do. So these moats can be based on the brand loyalty, proprietary technology, economies of scale, or, as I will argue throughout this course, a unique organizational culture that competitors simply cannot replicate. Okay, so as we conclude this part, I want you to remember this. Strategy is about making choices. It is about saying no to 100 good ideas so that you can say yes to the one great idea that defines your firm. So next part, we will look at the specific role of a manager in this process and why studying this discipline is essential for your global career. Um, okay, so next part, actually, this is the last part for the first week, this week. So we have covered the structure of the course and the formal definition of strategy. Now we must ask the most practical question of all. Why does this matter to you? Whether you aspire to be a CEO, a consultant, an entrepreneur, or a middle manager in a multinational corporation, why is strategic thinking the most critical skill you can develop? Um, the first reason is the nature of the modern business environment. We often use the acronym VUCA. Have you ever heard that? The VUCA to describe the world today: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. So in a stable environment, you don't really need a strategy. So you just need a good operating manual. But we do not live in a stable world. Of course, everything will be changed quickly and rapidly and suddenly. So technological disruption like generative AI are rewriting industry rules overnight. So geopolitical tensions are shifting supply chains that have been in place for decades. Climate change is forcing companies to rethink their entire value chains. In such an environment, strategic thinking acts as a compass. It does not tell you exactly which step to take, but it tells you which direction you are heading. So managers who lack strategic perspective often fall into an activity trap. Um, okay, they fall in activity trap. So they are extremely busy, answering hundreds of emails, attending back-to-back meetings, and solving daily crises. But at the end of the year, they realize the company hasn't actually moved forward. It's normal, right? Also, I did the same when I was in a company. Anyway, so they have been running on the treadmill. Studying strategies allows you to step back from the daily noise and focus on the signal. It helps you distinguish between a temporary trend and a fundamental shift in a market. So this leads us to the role of manager in the strategic process. So traditionally, strategy was seen as something done only by the top management team, TMT, like a CEO, CFO, CHRO, COO, so behind the closed door. Of course, many company, many organizations do this way in recent days. But anyway, the rest of the organization was simply expected to execute. This model is dead. So in the modern organization, strategy happens at every level. So a frontline manager who notices a change in customer behavior and reports it upward is participating in the emergent strategy process. A marketing manager who decides how to position a new product is making a business level strategic choice. An HR manager who designed a recruitment strategy to attract AI talent is building a core competency. So therefore, you need to understand strategy not just so you can create it, but so you can interpret it and align your team's actions with the overall goals of the firm. So another reason why this study is so vital is the concept of a strategy, intent, and stretch. A great manager does not just manage existing resources. They create a stretch between where the company is and where it wants